To start this video lecture, I want that you ask this question to yourself. How are traits transmitted down generations? And now we know that there's DNA and that there's RNA and proteins and there are cells and all these things, and we know, but in the beginning humans didn't know about these things. Actually, the word genetics is relatively recent, but humans have been using genetics for a long time, and we're going to start that and showing you the first example, that is selective breeding. As I said before, the earliest ideas about inheritance come from selective breeding, and we have very strong archaeological evidence that showed that domestication was used for a long time ago. Yeah, so we have camels, we have horses, we have pictures with dogs, cats, and it's pretty obvious that we were using animals from a long time ago. And not only that, we have examples like the selective breeding of dogs from an ancestor that looked like a wolf. After a few centuries of selection, we have traits like the height. You can see that this dog looked more like a horse. And if you see here, there is a very tiny dog, very short, very small dog, that they have an ancestor in common, that it was a wolf. And we will study in more detail all these examples of selective breeding. And nature also create beautiful examples of dogs. So, for example, this dog that looked like a mop use all this hair to protect against wolf. So if a predator is going to attack him, he has so much hair that when they try to bite them, he's protected. He uses it as a cushion, and it's very difficult to attack him. So today I told you that there is a lot of archaeological evidence from a long time ago, before Christ, that showed that horses, camel, ox, and our animal has been domesticated. And a picture like this will show us that this was happening in many cultures at the same time. Also, another beautiful example of selective breeding is the breed of dogs, that they come from an ancestor that they were wolf, and through artificial selection we have a great diversity of breeds, and we will talk more about that in the classroom. In the previous slide we talked about selective breeding of animals, but we have also a strong evidence of selective breeding of plants. So a lot of the diversity of plants, of vegetables and fruits that we have right now is based on selective breeding. And we have genetic evidence, and we will talk about one particular example, that is the corn, that we can see clearly where the corn appear and how it start diversifying. But this didn't start a few centuries ago. There is evidence that the Assyrians were sophisticated and experienced breeders of not only animals but also plants. For example, they were able to artificially pollinate palms uh, from a long time ago, approximately 800 years before Christ. So, in other words, we have been playing with genetics for a long time. Although we don't know exactly how genes work or what was DNA, humans, we have been using genetics for thousands and thousands of years. So we will talk about the selective breeding of maize, but before doing that, I have to tell you why this happened, how selective breeding appeared, and it seems that plant cultivation probably began as soon as man stopped his nomadic existence and they settled down in one stop. And why? Because humans would have been able to have a reliable source of food. So we have examples of plants like corn, rice, as well as wheat, that they definitely were cultivated for a long time ago. But how this happened? Possibly what happened, it went from an unconscious attempt to a conscious attempt. So maybe they were trying to breed all the plants, and from time to time they get a big one, and they start noticing that if you take all the big plants, you will start getting bigger plants the next generation, and this was very good for everybody because they have more food. So possibly went from an unconscious to to a conscious event. So I told you first that the cultivation of many plants, including this tree, it began a long time ago, as early as 5,000 years before Christ or before our current age. And the dates are not very important, but I just want to know that this happened a long time ago. And I also told you that the selective breeding or artificial selection, they mean the same thing, that the appearance of a new varieties from unconscious attempts to breed and cultivate must surely have to lead in time to a conscious attempt. So from unconscious to a conscious intent, and we start using this technique that is called selective breeding. In other words, selective breeding is to propagate the desirable traits while eliminate the undesirable traits. And who is in control of this? The breeders. So in this case, human take the corns that are bigger because they are the desirable traits, and we breed them. And in the case of the selective breed on maize, it's very interesting because the ancestor looked more like grass, and now the one that we have in the supermarket is very different, is very big. So we have both evidence, archaeological and genetic evidence, that suggest, and they both are consistent, that show that the ancestor was very, very different. So this is the one that we have in the supermarket that appeared in 1947, and it was created as a hybrid in France. But before that, in Europe, there was a lot of variety. So there was different colors and different sizes. And if you go even before that, in Mexico, the difference, it was even bigger. And when now we see the ancestor, that is more than 7,000 years ago, these look very, very different. And as I said, it looked more like a grass. So we will talk more about that in the next slides.